Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
Buckle up. It's the Football Playbook with your boy RIC and the place to be, Ric Serritella. Checking in from the Jersey Shore here on this Monday, September 26, 2022. It's our 20th episode, oh, by the way. And it is a championship football Monday. That's how the Philadelphia Eagles are playing, like a championship caliber football team. And you want to give me the criticism? Hey, they really haven't faced a contender. Hey, Jalen Hurts is beating up on makeshift defenses. Hey, you can only play who's in front of you. The Eagles are taking care of business and doing it in a big, big way. That's right. Paul Kane in the chat room, 3-0. We're flying high over here on the Football Playbook. Got a great show lined up for you today. Martin Frank from the Delaware News Journal will be making his Football Playbook debut at 11 a.m. We'll also have Howard Balzer, longtime NFL insider, of course, every Monday at 11:30. Philadelphia's finest. He'll break down some Eagles. We'll go around the league with him in hour two. But I want to get into the Giants. I got my notes. The Giants and the Dolphins are your only other undefeated teams here after 3 weeks, pending the Giants Monday Night Football game tonight against your Dallas Cowgirls. We'll get into that later on in the show. Oh, by the way, but that's the league we live in 2022. You got 3 weeks in the books and only 3 teams undefeated, with your Miami Dolphins in the AFC. Who would have thunk? And your Philadelphia Eagles in the NFC. We'll see if the Giants can keep the big day balls going tonight against the Cooper Rush-led Dallas Cowboys. But it's all about Jalen Hurts today, if you ask me. Stephen Michael in the chat room, it's like great minds think alike. It's almost like you're streamed into the JAKIB Sports YouTube channel so much that you already know what I'm thinking. I'm only 20 episodes in. Yes, 900 plus yards passing, 150 plus yards rushing. I have it right here in my notes. Not the first quarterback in history. Maybe it is the first quarterback in history. I know a player hasn't done that since at least 1950. And every week we come here on Monday, we talk about a historical performance from Jalen Hurts, doing things that have rarely been done, or if ever done, in the National Football League. Are there still haters out there on the Jalen Hurts situation? Because why in the world would you give up on a guy that's 24 years old and playing at an elite level? Jalen Hurts is playing at an elite level. There's 5 words in Hurts. There's 5 words in elite. Dare I say it? There might not be 5 quarterbacks in the National Football League better than Jalen Hurts right now. Whether you want to believe that or not, that's on you. All I can say for my 21st year of covering the National Football League, guy looks pretty good to me. Guy looks outstanding to me. Guy looks like an MVP candidate, quite frankly. Jalen Hurts, that's who I'm talking about. Not Carson Wentz. Jalen Hurts, who, oh, by the way, Brian Baldinger, our good friend Baldy, you don't want to take my word for it? Called him the best deep ball passer in the National Football League through the first 3 weeks of the season. So if you don't want to take my word for it, nobody spends more time in the film room than Brian Baldinger. Go take his word for it. And I'll get into some of the deep ball passes that Hurts had. I thought were on the money, on the mark, dropping dimes in the bucket. Woo! It's like Picasso out here, man. I need to get over to Italy and see me some Picasso, and if I don't, I'm going to go down to Philly because that's the next best thing the closest thing I can find to it. Shout out to all the chat room people waking up with us here on the JAKIB Sports YouTube channel. Of course, you're home for the Eagles pre- and post-game over at Ocean Casino Resorts. Again, it was lit. It was popping. And the Eagles were popping off early and often in this game here against good old friend Carson Wentz. And this was, we've been keeping tabs on each week. The theme this week, which I loved at the top of the show, by the way, great job by Fox, I think it was on. Jalen Hurts did a pregame interview. I love the quote. He said, and they were talking about A.J. Brown coming over and his message to A.J. Brown and what they spoke about, and in terms of the leadership that Hurts and Brown are going to provide. But the conversation went a little like this. Be a thermostat, not a thermometer. And when I go and write my Super Bowl book at the end of the year for this mystical, magical Philadelphia Eagles carpet ride, Chapter 3 is going to be titled Be a Thermostat, Not a Thermometer. That's going to be the title of Chapter 3. In other words, dictate the tone, dictate the temperature. Don't adjust to how hot or how cold it could be in the Philadelphia media market, in between the white stripes. You dictate the temperature. Don't let somebody else dial it up or dial it down. You be the thermostat. Don't be a thermometer. Paul Keane in the chat room says, what do you think is causing the second half performance by the offense? Yeah. That's one of my points of conversation today. You want to be critical on something? One of the things we can be critical about, 65 of your 84 points this year have come in the second quarter. All 24 points yesterday came in the second quarter. And out of those 84 points this year, only 14 points have come in the second half. And it's a good question. Is it play calling? Is it a mindset? Is it, let's be honest. I'm going to get into some of my reactions throughout the game, but I remember here writing in my notes at halftime, this game was mentally and physically over by halftime. It was over. 24-0. The Eagles went for it on 4th and goal right there before the half. Another Devonta Smith spectacular play, touchdown. And I'm trying to get our good friend Gail Saunders, who was down at the game, on because the Boo Birds were out. The Boo Birds were out at 9:16 in the first quarter when Washington was punting on their own 9-yard line. The Philly crowd was louder than any Washington Commanders crowd put together. That was in the first quarter. At halftime, the Commanders got booed off the field. Booed off the field at their home stadium. And you saw Jalen Hurts post-game press conference. He said it felt like a home game. It felt like a home game. Now, Live with Coos in the chat room says the conservative play calling in the second half, it's a mentality that they need to get away from. I don't know if it's the play calling. I got to go back and look at it. It might be a coincidence. Hey, the points are coming in bunches. However you get them, it's dominant football. And the second quarter, it seems to be where they turn it on. Yeah, they got to play 4 quarters of better football. But that's a well-rounded game. Oh, by the way, 9 sacks. 9 sacks. Really with a four-man rush. The blitz percentage or the pressure percentage was 36.5%. So they went from 16% in week 1 think it was like 33% in week 2, 36.5% this past week. 7 players on the defensive line had 3 or more pressures, a 17.3% sack rate. I mean, give credit to the secondary too, because Bradbury's been lights out. Darius Slay, big game Slay, came to play once again. Epps played 100% of the snaps. I think Chauncey Gardner played 100% of the snaps. Because the coverage is so good in the secondary, it allows these guys to get to the quarterback really necessarily without blitzing, but they're getting pressure to the quarterback with this 4-man rush on a third of the plays, which is outstanding. It's complementary football. It's what we call championship football. Now, hey, we're going to nitpick. How do we get better? Hey, we want to play 4 quarters of better football. That's something to work on in the next 3 games, because don't look now. I don't like the early week bye, the week 7 bye, but don't look now. The Philadelphia Eagles should be and are expected to be undefeated going into the bye week. Good old friend Doug Peterson's dialing it up down there in Jacksonville, and it'll be Jaguars week. We got Austin Lane checking in tomorrow. We got Tony Baselli later on in the week. We'll get into the Jaguars with our good friend, Coach John D. Filippo, because it's Doug Peterson week, right after Carson Wentz week. But they should take care of business against the Jaguars. Then I think they got the Arizona Cardinals, who is going to be a tough game on the road. It's a game they should win. And then week 6, I don't care if Dak is back or not. With or without Dak Prescott, the Philadelphia Eagles should beat your Dallas Cowboys. So they should be 6-0 going into the bye week. 5-1, sign me up right now. 5-1, sign me up right now, because that means a third of the way through, the Eagles will be on pace to be a 14-3 ball club. That's the kind of football that they're playing right now. Only the Giants and Dolphins are undefeated. We'll see if the Giants get through the Cooper Rush-led Cowboys tonight. We'll get more on that tonight or later on in the show with Howard Balzer when he jumps on. Jalen Hurts, first player since 1950. Over 900 yards passing, over 100 yards rushing. And I love the quote. I love the quote by Mark Skreleth, who's been doing a lot of these Eagles games. At the end of the game, he was talking about Jalen Hurts and Carson Wentz, the compare and contrast, and he said something that really stood out to me that I agree with. He said there's 2 types of athletes in the National Football League. Those who are humble and those who are about to be humbled. Think about that. Jalen Hurts is as humble as they come. Doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low. Carson Wentz basically admitted earlier in the week, said I could have been a better teammate, could have been a better person, acknowledging that he was immature. Those who are humble and those who are about to be humbled, AKA the difference between being a starter in the National Football League and being a backup, because Carson Wentz, 3rd team in 3 years, holds on to the football too long, makes a lot of bad plays, takes a lot of poor sacks. This is his last year as a starter in the NFL. In fact, I said it last week, when Carson Wentz comes back to the link in week 10, it'll probably be Sam Howell time. Because Washington will realize what a mistake they made. Just like the Indianapolis Colts realized a year ago, the Washington Commanders will be moving on from Carson Wentz. I guarantee that. Take that to the books. Carson Wentz will not be your Washington starter next year. And I don't think he'll be the starter by week 10. I think Sam Howell will be in there because they're going to find out what Sam Howell's about. And I said it before the season. I'd rather go to war with Taylor Heinicke. Pop a cold one open for me, Taylor. Keep it cracking, baby. So, say what you want about the second half. Yeah, they took their foot off the gas once again for the third straight week. But when you play like this, that's called nitpicking. It's called nitpicking. And, you saw, again, those who are humbled and those who are about to be. Look at the body language. Did you see the body language of Carson Wentz early on, all game long, first half, second half? This guy was so frustrated. What did they have? 6 sacks by halftime? Philadelphia outscored Washington 300 or yardage. They outscored them 24-0 on the yardage, 322 yards to 50 at halftime. Physically and mentally beat down by halftime. And you started to see the mental clock speed up in Carson Wentz's head, especially in the second half. I think it was the first time in like 60 years that they had 9 sacks. And everybody got in on the action. I mean, Fletcher Cox, he was hugging Carson in the pregame. He was hugging him all game on the sack attack. Javon Hargrove, he was in on the mix. Josh Sweat, big time week. Hassan Reddick was in there too. Oh, by the way, Jordan Davis got in on the fun on the last sack. I mean, you could not expect or ask for a more impressive defensive performance than what your Philadelphia Eagles turned into yesterday. Outstanding. Both sides of the ball. Outstanding. I'm going to get more into my in-game takeaways, but just a quick look at the snap counts, because we've been keeping tabs on that defensive line. I love what they're doing with the defensive line rotation. I think it's smart to have Fletcher Cox play 47% of the snaps yesterday. Almost a throwback to his rookie season when he was first coming into the league. Now, instead of bringing him up to speed, they're preserving that energy, and I like it. I like it a lot. In fact, the whole defensive line rotation, nobody played more than 60% of the snaps. Josh Sweat played 61%. Hassan Reddick, 56%. Hassan Reddick, what are they paying this guy? $14 million this year? $10 million? $11 million? This guy's making a lot of money. He's only playing 56% of the snaps. And that's okay. It's okay. Javon Hargrave, 53% of the snaps. And I like the interior, what they've done here. How many times, this ain't Texas A&M, this ain't Alabama, this ain't Georgia, this is the National Football League. How many times can you have a 7 or 8 man rotation and feel good about it? Because you had Sweat at 61%, Reddick at 56%, Hargrave at 53%. On the interior, Milton Williams, 49%, Cox, 47%, Marlon T, 44%. You want to talk about the Jordan Davis, 31%. He played, I think, 24 snaps. So he's averaging about 23 snaps per game. But we talked about Derek Barnett. How would they fill that void? Well, hey, Patrick Johnson played 36%. Brandon Graham, 35%. Teron Jackson was in the mix too. So maybe they don't need JPP. Maybe they don't need reinforcements because they kept it in-house. Everybody stepped their game up, and it resulted in 9 sacks. When's the last time the Eagles had 9 sacks? Was it 60 years ago? Unbelievable. Every time I come on the show, we're talking about historical records. That's the level of play the Philadelphia Eagles are playing with. And outside of the Miami Dolphins, there's nobody in the NFL hotter. Go look at the Super Bowl odds. What are they down to? 9-1? 12-1? I saw the Tampa Bay and Green Bay game yesterday. Did you look like those were the top NFC teams? I saw the 49ers last night. I'll get into that debacle. Did the 49ers look like the team to beat in the NFC? The Packers, the Bucks? Who's that team standing in the way of Philadelphia? We're going to find out Thanksgiving week. Because until we face Green Bay Thanksgiving week on November 27th, I'm going to have all the naysayers, the doubters, and the haters telling me that Philadelphia hasn't played anybody of relevance. Well, all you can do is beat the people they put in front of you. Timothy Walker in the chat room. Daniel, good to see you. He's a newbie. Dominic Dabby. Shout out to all the chat room. It's all about the coaching. You're right. Jonathan Gannon. Stand up. Shane Steichen, who I think Johnny Mack on the Birds 365 show said, hey, enjoy him now while you can because he might not be on the team next year. Shane Steichen is calling plays in a way where he's going to get head coaching consideration. That's what I think. Oh, Rick, it's only 3 weeks. I can't give Jalen Hurts $40 million now just on 3 games. Come see me week 17, week 18. Come see me January. Come see me February. The football playbook, we call it like we see it. Did you see the first 3 weeks? Because if you watched football for as long as I have and came away saying that Jalen Hurts isn't a franchise quarterback, then you just don't know football. You want to give up on this guy? You want to give up on Jalen Hurts? 3 years into the system, 24 years old, and you want to go draft a new quarterback instead of paying this guy? Give me a break. That's bad business. My good friend Craig T. Smith, longtime scout who's been scouting football for even longer than I have, says Hurts is a fun watch. Holy cow, the Eagles are scary. Yeah, because they can beat you in the pass. They can beat you on the ground. Now, the ground game wasn't stellar yesterday. They only averaged 2.4 yards per carry on the ground. 21 first downs. They won the first down game. 21 first downs. 16 came through passing. Another 3 came on the ground. I think 2 of them came through penalty. Oh, by the way, they lost the time of possession game. They only had the ball 27 minutes. But when you dominate 400 yards to 240, with most of that coming in the first half, you can get by the Washington Commanders. Devonta Smith, by the way, early and often, career high, 169 receiving yards. We'll get more into that. Eagles social media. I love the social media team with the Eagles changing the W to the L at the midfield. But a lot of game balls to give away here. A lot of game balls to give away. The defense, 9 sacks, 17 hits on Carson Wentz. Again, 36.5% pressure, 7 players with more than 3 pressures, and a 17.3% sack rate. Okay. I'm going to get into more of my in-game reactions. Before we do, I know we got a star-studded show. Martin Frank from Delaware News Journal is going to join us at 11. We got Howard Balzer, longtime NFL insider, at 11:30. We'll talk more Eagles on the other side. Real quickly, I want to bring you up to speed around the league in terms of other things that I saw. How about those Dolphins taking care of business? 21-19 over the Bills. I think the Bills' defensive secondary has been exposed, and they didn't even get Tyreek Hill involved in this game, quite frankly. They still win. The Tua concussion protocol, I think the NFLPA will be looking into that whole situation, but the Dolphins 3-0, they're the talk of the town in the AFC. The Colts, they get on the grid. Our good friend Frank Wright gets off the snide. A lot of heat on his seat. They beat the Chiefs 20-17. Special teams, I think, cost Kansas City in this ballgame. Interestingly enough, Patrick Mahomes was blitzed on 45% of his snaps during the first two games. Frank Wright and company only blitzed him twice that entire game. So maybe that's the recipe to beat Patrick Mahomes. Sit back, try to let these Chiefs receivers beat you. But the Colts take care of business 20-17. Another guy playing for a big money contract. We talk about Jalen Hurts being a $40 million quarterback. To me, there's no doubt in my mind Lamar Jackson's going to be a $50 million quarterback. Whether that's on Baltimore or somebody else, somebody's going to pay this man the money he deserves. 18-29, 218 yards, 4 touchdowns passing, another 1 rush, 5 touchdowns for Lamar Jackson. Oh, by the way, Mac Jones, high ankle sprain. New England Patriots, their season looks like doom and gloom. Staying in the AFC, Titans beat the Raiders 24-22. Josh McDaniels 0-3. If you want a side story in this one, our good old friend Mac Hollins has emerged as a somewhat playmaker. He had a big week. Bengals come back, the bounce back week for Joe Burrow. Take care of business there, 27-12. One thing I do want to highlight, Sauce Gardner, who was first-round pick for the Jets, played extremely well on Jamar Chase. So if you want to take a positive takeaway on the Jets yesterday, Sauce Gardner looks like the real deal. And then our Jaguars, they didn't just beat the Chargers, they whooped them. They whooped the Chargers 38-10. This was another game over by halftime. Brandon Staley has to be better. Justin Herbert's in the end of the game. They're down by 28 points. Justin Herbert's still taking snaps. He's injured. You got to preserve this guy long term. I thought that was a bad decision by Brandon Staley. We talk about Nakobe Dean not playing for the Eagles. Coming out of the draft, him and Devin Lloyd were considered inside linebacker 1 and 2. Devin Lloyd had a big, big day for those Jacksonville Jaguars yesterday. Okay, so that's your AFC report. And then you got the NFC. Again, Howard Balzer will be on at the end of the show, who covers the Cardinals. They could not defeat the world champion LA Rams. The Rams, whose run game is atrocious, they found a way to win this one 20-12. Aaron Donald, 100 sacks. Only the second true defensive tackle in NFL history to have that 100 sack. John Randall, an undrafted free agent who's in the Hall of Fame, by the way, good friend of the show, being the only other one. Remember, sacks were really not an official stat. I think 1982 is when they start keeping tracks of that. It's still impressive for Aaron Donald. Green Bay, 14, Tampa Bay, 12. Bucks make a late game charge, but, this one was Aaron Rodgers' fast start. He completed 12 of his first 13 passes. Tom Brady missed his weapons. I think this is going to be a playoff rematch. I think the Packers will see the Bucks again in the playoffs, and the Bucks will be at full strength. Mike Evans suspended for this one, so the Packers get him this time. I think the Bucks might be the better team, but we shall see later on in the road. How about the Vikings with their Kirk Cousins comeback? He was terrible all game. And at the end of the day, Dan Campbell cost this. The Lions have everything but a good head coach and a good quarterback. I think Detroit will have a big decision to make on Dan Campbell. He basically admitted after the game to go for the field goal instead of going for it on fourth down. Said it was a poor decision. Wish I had it back. I cost us the game. I agree, Dan. You're a bad head coach. You're a bad in-game decision maker. And that's why you let the Vikings steal this game from you 28-24. Captain checkdown, Kirk Cousins, stunk all game long. The Lions gifted another victory to the Minnesota Vikings. What a joke Dan Campbell is. Sorry. Panthers, I told you this might be one of the few games they can win. They get off the snide. They beat the Saints 22-14. The big talk out of this game, the Saints suddenly, don't look now. By the way, the Eagles, if the season ended today, the Eagles would have the 6th pick in the draft. I know a lot of you in the chat room were clamoring for Will Anderson, who's probably the best player in the draft. But if the Eagles are at 6, they got the draft equity. Maybe they can move up. They got the 6th overall pick because the Saints stink, quite frankly. Jameis Winston, they're talking about a quarterback change already. Dennis Allen saying we're going to stick with Winston, but Andy Dalton, warm up that arm. Andy Dalton could be coming out of the bullpen for your New Orleans Saints, which is great for the Philadelphia Eagles. Play Andy Dalton, please. Hey, that 6th pick might be a top 3 pick. Suddenly you might get the best player in the draft next year. Oh, by the way, don't look now. I heard the Eagles are $35 million under the cap for next year. They should be able to get that Jalen Hurts deal done. Meanwhile, there's guys out here that don't want to pay Hurts the money. That's not me. I'm so tired, frankly, of being a broken record because I've been talking about this since the preseason. Finally, the rest of the media is catching up to the football playbook. We've been teaching and preaching since August. Falcons beat the Seahawks 27-23 in the NFC. Who cares? Bears beat the Texans 23-20. Who cares? And then last night, the Broncos looked like a Yankees-Red Sox game. 11-10. Broncos beat the 49ers at the end, despite Nathaniel Hackett's another bad coach. Another bad coach, in my opinion. But they overcome the bad coaching and the poor play by Russell Wilson, quite frankly, until the last drive. You know, they're trying to make – I remember towards the end of the Jim Moore era in Atlanta, a good friend of the show, by the way, they tried to make Mike Vick a pocket passer. It didn't exactly work out. Nathaniel Hackett's trying to make Russell Wilson a pocket passer. Stop it. Just stop it right now. And you saw the last drive where Wilson was able to move around, pick up first downs with his feet, and then beat you with the pass. The Broncos pulled this out, but Nathaniel Hackett is not the guy. I'm sorry. Kyle Shanahan's going to have to overcome some bad quarterback play because Jimmy G made bad decisions. He pulled the Dan Orlovsky, by the way, running out of his own end zone on the safety, and then some bad throws down the stretch, especially the last interception to seal the deal. But how about this one? The report before the game, Jimmy G, who had a no-trade clause, we talked about all his contract negotiations. Washington had a deal on the table that would have brought Jimmy G to Washington during the offseason. Jimmy G, with his no-trade clause, looking at that whole Daniel Snyder situation, who he could be gone sometime soon. Jimmy just, thanks but no thanks. I'm good. I don't want to go to Washington. And so Jimmy G shot down the trade that would have sent him to Washington. Instead, they give up a king's ransom for Carson Wentz, who will be out of here after the year. Ron Rivera shot down that report after the game, by the way. But Jimmy G could have been a Washington Commander instead of Carson Wentz. So that's your week that was. I wanted to get that in because I know we got a star-studded lineup with our friend Martin Frank, Howard Balzer in hour 2 of the show. Hey, it's the Football Playbook with Ric Serritella, brought to you by Ocean Casino Resorts, your home for Eagles pre- and post-game. On the other end of this break, I've got some key takeaways, some in-game reactions that I'm going to go through with you. So keep it locked, hit the like button. We'll be back right after this.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Action News at 11 with Rick Williams. It's the team you trust to bring it all together. The stories that impact your community, a sports roundup for the locals, and the AccuWeather forecast you depend on. Action News at 11 with Rick Williams.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
Welcome to Pondley Hockey. We've helped over 100,000 injured and disabled workers obtain benefits, as well as some of the biggest settlements in the state. If you've been injured at work, give Pondley Hockey a call.
Back at it again. Ric Serritella here on the Football Playbook TFB with RIC. Our 20th episode here brought to you by Ocean Casino Resorts. Monday, September 22nd. We are dialed in. We are locked up, ready to go. We got a great show for you here today. If you like what you're watching and listening to, we appreciate all the love and support. Hit the like button, smash it, bash it, mash it. Subscribe to JAKIB Sports YouTube channel, your home for Eagles pre and post game, and of course 12 hours daily of live coverage on this Victory Monday. 3-0. The Eagles are soaring sky high. I think they're third in the Super Bowl odds out there in Vegas. A lot of people jumping on board of this Eagles bandwagon that myself and Jody Mack were driving in the preseason, and it's so happy to see the rest of the media catch up to us now, because I feel like a broken record telling you Jalen Hurts is the franchise quarterback, telling you that Jalen Hurts, all he has done is developed and improved his deep ball accuracy, his short to intermediate game, the confidence level, big time audible at the line of scrimmage that I'll get to in. Oh, by the way, man, even our own good friend Brian Baldinger said he's the best deep ball thrower in the NFL right now. I got a question to all of our listeners, to all of our chat room people, to everybody who watches the Football Playbook. Tell me how many starting quarterbacks in the National Football League would you go in a battle with for week 4 as your starter? Who would you rather have other than Jalen Hurts right now? How many quarterbacks would you rather have than Jalen Hurts if you had to win one game? It's a short list. Brady, Rodgers, Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. Then it gets interesting. Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, maybe. Herbert doesn't win games. Jalen Hurts wins games. There's really only a half a dozen quarterbacks in the National Football League that are playing at a higher level than Jalen Hurts. And I said Hurts has 5 letters, so does elite. I remember a time when we were questioning and wondering, is Eli Manning elite? Is Joe Flacco elite? All they did was lead their teams to a Super Bowl victory, and I think Jalen Hurts is trending in that direction, and nobody will question that. But you know what? Knowing the Philadelphia market, there'll still be media members out here. Jalen Hurts can win a Super Bowl. And there are going to be people that say, oh, well, you know what? They had the number 1 rushing offense, and they had a top-ranked defense, and they added A.J. Brown. Oh, you could throw anybody in there. Give me a break. Going to be dealing with this for another 18 weeks, hopefully. We'll take it. Hey, all you can do is beat who's in front of you and take care of your business. Now, I had a lot of notes throughout the game. I tried to give you the Cliff Note version. Martin Frank coming up at 11. Howard Balzer at 11:30. But some of my takeaways here from that game, and most of them were in the first half because that's where all the action was. But I love the fact that at one point early on in the first quarter, there was 3 consecutive sacks by the Eagles defense. And I think I mentioned it. 9 minutes and 16 seconds into the first half, Washington's punting on their own 9-yard line. And the Philly crowd, I think Washington had to go to a silent snap count at certain points of this game. But the first 7 dropbacks of Carson Wentz in this game resulted in 4 sacks. The Eagles were on it from the gate. And so on that punt return, by the way, they had Devonta Smith back there right around midfield, which I thought was interesting. And I think that's something that you can see come playoff time is more Devonta Smith back there returning punts. I don't know if you want to do that on the regular, but Britton Covey, for all the kudos and props we've given him, and he was elevated, I think, the 3rd time from the practice squad. Howie Roseman has a decision to make because, you know, they called him the crash test dummy on the broadcast, and he was the crash test dummy. And he had 1 muffed punt, a couple other returns where he just got hammered on the returns. So now they've got to make a decision on Britton Covey on the 53-man roster. But I thought it was interesting. We saw A.J. Brown, I think, in week 1 return a punt. Devonta Smith returned a punt there in the first quarter. And kudos to Zach McPherson because, again, Darius Slay, 80% of the snaps last week. I think 79% this week. But he was out as early as the first quarter. Slay was out with the injury. Zach McPherson stepped in and played relatively well. He wasn't a liability. He was not a liability like Brian St. Juste, who the Washington team moved out to the boundary. St. Juste got abused and picked on all day long by A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. It was not too big for Zach McPherson. Despite his preseason woes, he played relatively well again. Now, keeping it in the first quarter, Hurts hit Devonta Smith to that 45-yard bomb. He dropped it in the bucket. I mean, now you can argue whether or not that was a catch or not. But again, give Hurts some credit because Hurts had the whereabouts to hurry up the offense, get the play snapped, and get off another play while Riverboat Ron was trying to debate and regulate. Oh, do I throw the red flag? Do I challenge the play? Too late, Ron. Jalen's already going. They got the next play off. They had to explain to Rivera, like, hey, bro, you snooze, you lose. Jalen Hurts too quick for you, man. You better stop hitting that snooze button. But a great drop in the bucket on a 45-yard bomb to Devonta. And they had to settle for the field goal and go up 3-0. But that was my big takeaway from the first quarter. My other takeaway on the Washington side was Curtis Samuel's a jackknife. That guy's a weapon. And he didn't really have a lights out game or a big time performance, I don't think, statistically speaking. But They lined him up. They used him in motion. They used him in the slot. They used him out wide. They lined him up in the backfield. Curtis Samuel's a good player. I like that. Curtis Samuel's a jackknife. So those are my first quarter takeaways. We go into the second quarter where all 24 points, again, 65 of the Eagles' 84 points this year have come in the second quarter, all 24. So, Goddard on that screen pass that he took to the house, big time play by Sayamalu and Jason Kelsey, big time blocks on that Goddard screen pass. He takes it to the house, 10-0. Okay. And then they come back. They should have had 31 points in the second quarter, because look at this series. I have this series specifically highlighted because I thought, for all the great that Shane Steichen does, we're giving all these props and kudos. We're out here like the Brooklyn Brawler, giving ourselves pats on the back. You want some criticism? I'll give you some criticism. One, in the first quarter, Jalen Hurts, he had an early series where I thought he needed to do a better job of knowing the circumstances and situations. It was like a 2nd and 7. He threw a 2-yard pass, 3rd and 5. And just kind of knowing the down and distance and circumstances. That's my critique of Jalen Hurts. For Shane Steichen, it was this drive here. Like Hurts said last week, they left money on the table. They left money on the table in the second half because they got the ball on their own goal line after the Brenton Covey muffed punt. They were on their own goal line. Miles Sanders provides some relief with a 13-yard run. Hurts comes back with a perfect bullseye to A.J. Brown for a 13-yard bullet. It was a freaking dart. Then he comes back, first down, moves the chains again, Devonta Smith. Now they go in the no-huddle hurry-up, which I like, Shane Steichen, I like that. No-huddle hurry-up offense. We haven't seen that a lot this year. They get another first down to Pascal. Okay, then they get a late hit on Hurts. There's no foul called. There was a late hit on Hurts, no penalty. Now, 3rd and 5, this is the big-time audible. Not Shane Steichen. Jalen Hurts called the audible on 3rd and 5 here. And he picks up, it's 3rd and 5. He gets the QB draw. He audibles to a QB draw to set up a 4th and 1. Okay, Sirianni, we know he has no problem going for it on 4th down. So they go for it on 4th down. And this is where my criticism of Shane Steichen comes in. Got a little too cute, little too fancy with the whole fake reverse. That was a debacle. And I think it was to Zach Pasco, who Chris Franklin from the North Star Ledger mentioned. He's from the D.C. area. Maybe that was the Eagles' way of getting them involved. Don't do it that way. That was terrible. That was terrible, as our good friend Charles Barkley might say. A guest, though, by the way, on the Seth Joyner show on the JAKIB Sports YouTube channel. You can go back and watch that great one-on-one. But terrible call on the fake reverse debacle, okay? With 5:39 left in the second quarter, they did another deep ball to Quez Watkins, right? And that's where I've talked about this. You've got to take shots deep down the field, whether you execute them or not, because you got to keep the defense honest and you got to make them respect that. Now, everybody remembers the big play from Quez a week or two ago, the big 54-yard bomb. So they go deep to Watkins. It's incomplete, but laundry on the field. And this Richard Wildgoose gets called for pass interference. I remember vividly because I love this kid coming out of South Carolina. I said I'd never draft him. I'd never touch him because he's too physical. Sometimes corners are too physical. You say, Rick, what are you talking about? All you do is sit here and preach about being physical. Yeah, but sometimes when you're a cornerback, you can be a little bit too grabby, and that's Richard Wildgoose. He's been in the league, I think, now for 3 or 4 years. I guess he hasn't improved on that because I remember at South Carolina, he used to get flagged all the time for pass interference. So they test him deep in the second quarter. He gets called for pass interference. And that sets up the Devonta Smith cross pattern where he takes it for 31 yards. So the Eagles are driving, same drive, 3rd and 8. Sirianni calls a timeout. I like this. On 3rd and 8, Sirianni calls a timeout, recollects themselves. They go right to A.J. Brown on Brian St. Juste, who was overmatched in this game. A.J. Brown, one-on-one on St. Juste. Out comes the Batman cape. Eagles are up 17-0. A.J. Brown, and there was a Batman cape somewhere on the sideline, and now we're flying. Now we're flying. And I didn't think the Eagles were going to have another opportunity here, but they get the ball back with 1:57 before halftime. Hurts dinks and dunks his way down the field as he should, and then they set up the big 44-yard pass to Devonta Smith again, right? And then give credit to Coach Sirianni because they go 4th and goal. 4th and goal. They don't settle for the field goal. They don't settle for the 3. They go for the kill. They go for the kill shot, and I like that. On the road, 4th and goal. Hurts to Devonta Smith, touchdown, 24-0. To me, that was the nail in the coffin at halftime. I said, this game is over. Right there. Because you could have settled for the field goal and went up 20-0. Instead, they went for the kill shot. Credit Sirianni for being aggressive. Credit to Steichen for the play call. And the Eagles go up at halftime 24-0. 322 yards to 50. And this was one of those games where, you went at halftime, you went over to the fridge, you got yourself a nice frosty beverage, you kicked up the recliner, and you said, buckle up. It's going to be a fun second half. Johnny in the chat room, James, Chris, Dominique, removals by Davis, some newbies, some regulars. Chris, I love all the chat room love. Thanks for looking out. Hit that like button. Help your boy out if you like the game breakdown. Let's go to the second half. Not a lot to talk about, but there was some rain sprinkling down in the 3rd quarter. Again, the Eagles in the second half, they make the defense stay honest. Hurts throws a 50-yard pass that was on the mark, but it's incomplete to A.J. Brown, testing that defense deep to loosen up that underneath game. And I have here, Washington's first big play came with 2 minutes and 15 seconds left in the 3rd quarter. Scary Terry McLaurin makes a 24-yard catch, I think. That's the first big play of the whole entire Washington offense. It takes all the way until 2 minutes and 15 seconds left in the 3rd until the Commanders actually had a play of significance. How did the Eagles defense respond? Oh, they dialed it up again. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, a big 10-yard tackle for loss in the backfield after a Josh Sweat pass rush. So, again, give Eagles credit here with the defense. 9 sacks on the day. Didn't really dial it up on a blitz scheme, but the 4-man rush just kept getting back there, made Wentz uncomfortable. You saw it in his head. The mental clock sped up. Wentz felt uncomfortable. The Eagles defense pressured him. It was a party in the backfield. The Eagles are going to have to work on some of these sack dance celebrations with so many sacks. So 3rd quarter, no scoring really. It's still 24-0 at this point. You're hoping the Eagles get a shutout on the board. And then you go over to the 4th quarter where Deron Payne gets the safety on Boston Scott. But that is because of a big play by Avonte Maddox. I think Avonte Maddox gets a game ball as an unsung hero. What a big play on Logan Thomas, giving up about 7 inches and 60 pounds. Oh, by the way, Avonte Maddox crushes Logan Thomas at the goal line. The Commanders went for it on 4th and goal, and they tried this little shovel pass to Logan Thomas, and Avonte Maddox, buckle up. We got something for that. That's my favorite play of the game, quite frankly. And quite frankly, that's the mentality of the Eagles defense. I see Chris says Maddox is a dog. This defense has got a bunch of dogs, and they let him loose yesterday. They ran wild on Wentz. So Maddox makes the big goal line stuff on 4th down on Logan Thomas. That's how Daron Payne gets that safety, makes it 24-2. They get a garbage time touchdown to make it 24-8. I have Jordan Davis and TJ Edwards in on the sack party on the 9th and final sack of the game. It was good to see Jordan Davis get back there. But those are some key in-game takeaways that I saw throughout the game. And to tell me that Jalen Hurts is playing at anything less than an elite level right now tells me that you don't know football, son. If you're telling me Jalen Hurts isn't one of the elite signal callers in the NFL through the first 3 weeks of the National Football League, I just can't take you very seriously at this point. That's me. All right, seeing the place to be, breaking it down here at the Jersey Shore, broadcasting around the universe. TFB with RIC, brought to you by Ocean Casino Resorts. Now, I won't get a lot of college football talking on this show today. Maybe I can sneak some in tomorrow when we'll have Austin Lane. Oh, by the way, the former Jacksonville Jaguar, who I saw out there. He's fighting in the UFC now. He's out there chanting Duval. I said, let me get Austin Lane on to talk about some Jaguars. We'll have Eddie Kratz with his reaction like he does every Tuesday tomorrow. And so I don't know how much college football talk I'll get in, because you guys know I love to count you down to the NFL draft, which is just, I think I saw this morning, 213 days away. If you go to NFLDraftBible.com on Sports Illustrated, that's what we do over there. And quickly here, there's going to be people maybe right here on this network that say, you know what? The Eagles should still draft a quarterback. Well, hey, here's your NFL draft QB watch for you from the weekend. CJ Stroud, they take care of business. Ohio State does over Wisconsin. He goes 17-27, 281 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 1 interception. His first interception, I think he's got 16 touchdowns and 1 interception. So CJ Stroud is sitting on top of my board, but he's neck and neck with Bryce Young, who, oh, by the way, had 4 touchdowns against Vanderbilt. I think they smashed them like 56-3. Bryce Young goes 25-36, 385 yards, 4 touchdowns against an SEC foe. Will Levis, say what you want. He keeps taking care of business. You want to complain it was against Northern Illinois. He still threw for 303 yards and 4 touchdowns. And the SEC, it looks like SEC is going to produce a lot of first-round quarterbacks. Anthony Richardson is another guy we talked about at Florida. He goes 24 for 44, 453 passing yards, 2 touchdowns passing, 2 touchdowns rushing for Anthony Richardson in a loss to Tennessee. So Florida now, I believe they lost to Will Levis. They lose to Tennessee, but Richardson's still showing the flashes of why he should be in that first-round consideration. And then our guy, Tyler Van Dyke, not so good for the 25th ranked Miami Hurricanes, who will be unranked after this week because they lose to Middle Tennessee State. And Tyler Van Dyke gets benched. 16 out of 32, 50% completion percentage, only 138 yards passing, 2 interceptions. So TVD gets benched. This is a guy we're talking about as a potential first-round pick. So his stock is down. I think I think the other guys really did what they had to do to keep themselves in that first round conversation. And now Mario Cristobal will have a quarterback controversy down there at the U. Will it be TVD? Will it be Jake Garcia the rest of the way? So there's your quarterbacks. If you're still not a Jalen Hurts believer, those are the quarterbacks that your Philadelphia Eagles could be looking at. Like I said, with the Saints loss yesterday, the Eagles would be picking number 6 in the draft right now. And I think if the Saints have to turn to Andy Dalton, that might very well be a top 5 overall pick. So the Eagles are looking pretty in the standings. They're looking pretty in the draft order. And our next guest, Martin Frank, is looking real pretty as we come back from the commercial break. Of course, the Delaware News Journal, he'll be making his Football Playbook debut. After this break, it's all brought to you by Ocean Casino Resorts. We'll dive back in to the Eagles' big-time victory over those Washington Commanders right after this.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Action News at 11 with Rick Williams. It's the team you trust to bring it all together. The stories that impact your community. A sports roundup for the locals. And the AccuWeather forecast you depend on. Action News at 11 with Rick Williams.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
Welcome to Pondley Hockey. We've helped over 100,000 injured and disabled workers obtain benefits, as well as some of the biggest settlements in the state. If you've been injured at work, give Pondley Hockey a call.
Back at it again, Ric Serritella here on the Football Playbook with our first guest of today, Martin Frank, Delaware News Journal, making his Football Playbook debut. Martin, thank you so much for waking up with us today. I know you've been up at it early getting your next article prepped there for the Delaware News Journal, and I wanted to bring it on to talk about the Philadelphia Eagles because they're doing big-time things. It's only 3 weeks of the season. Carson Wentz week is in the books. Doug Peterson week is on deck. But I mean, in terms of an overall complete performance, you can nitpick, hey, the second half, they let the gas off the pedal, but offense, defense, a complete game here for the second week in the row. Don't look now. I think the Eagles are like third in the Super Bowl odds, but some big things happening here early on in the season in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I mean they're off to a great start. I mean, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to expect or to think they would be 3-0 at this point, but I think it's a little bit interesting to just how they've gotten to 3-0. I mean, they've totally dominated their last two opponents. I mean, and they were beating the Lions pretty badly, late in the third quarter, and that was probably closer than it should have been, but still, just the start they've gone off to. I mean, they've looked really good, like on both offense, especially, and defense. I mean, with the way they shut down Carson Wentz, and then the week before with the job they did on Justin Jefferson and the Vikings. I mean, it's been really impressive on both sides of the ball.
Well, I've been a Jalen Hurts supporter here since the preseason, so we'll start off on the defensive side of the ball because our listening audience is probably tired of hearing Rick sing the kudos of the one Jalen Hurts. He is playing elite and at an MVP level. We'll get into that before we go, Martin. But I see here 9 sacks, 17 hits on the quarterback. It was mostly a 4-man rush. They still applied pressure 36.5% of the time, and 17% of the dropbacks. Carson Wentz was sacked. 4 sacks on his first 7 dropbacks. I think his mental clock was sped up very early on in this game. You saw the body language, the frustration. I don't think Wentz ever really recovered from the first quarter. And, oh, by the way, the Philly crowd, Philly contingent, heavy out there at FedEx Field.
Yeah, well, actually, it was kind of interesting because even before the game, as the offense and defense were running on the field, the Commanders had the offense run on the field first, and they introduced the defense. And a lot of people were thinking that's because they didn't want all the Philly fans to be booing Carson Wentz when if they had introduced him, with the offense. But yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. I mean, it was just incredible. Like Carson Wentz was like, he had like nowhere to turn, and you could tell. I asked actually a couple players this, especially like Darius Slay, after the game about just how they could tell that Carson Wentz had been rattled after that first quarter. And he's like, oh, you could see it. He was just getting rid of the ball. He wasn't even looking where he was throwing half the time. I mean, it was something. I mean, like they were totally in his head, after the first couple series, and he was just trying to get rid of the ball. And the second half was all garbage time, basically. I mean, he's dinking and dunking, and they're moving the ball up the field. And, the Eagles are fine with that because he's taking time off the clock. I mean, but that first quarter was like really impressive. They had pressure on him, like you mentioned, like 36% of the time. I mean, 17 hits, 9 sacks. Yeah, it was kind of, in a way, it was kind of painful to see Carson Wentz play that way. But, I mean, that's kind of what he was like in his last season with the Eagles in 2020. I mean, just happy feet. He couldn't get his feet set. He's trying to move around the pocket, make plays, and he just held the ball too long. And I don't know. It was not a great performance on his part.
Bad sacks, bad turnover. He gets you excited because he makes an occasional good pass, and it says, oh, wow, that's a good throw. But he hasn't evolved, and there's a reason why Frank Wright had to discard him. There's a reason why he's on his 3rd team in 3 years. I saw the report last night. I had no idea until I heard of it, and Ron Rivera shot it down after the game. But apparently Jimmy G shot down a trade to the Washington Commanders in the offseason, so they turned their attention to Carson Wentz. I can't help to think that not only will Wentz be out of here, he'll be a backup in the National Football League next year. And by the time the Eagles see Washington in Week 10, it could be Sam Howell time by the time we see him again, right?
Oh yeah, I was just going to say that very thing. I mean, I don't think Carson Wentz will be the starting quarterback when the Commanders come and play the Eagles again in November. Either he'll be hurt from getting hit all the time, or he's going to be benched, because there's no way that Washington can kind of like keep going this way. I mean, they got good receivers. I mean, Terry McLaurin's one of the best in the NFL. Curtis Samuel is having a decent years. Jahan Dotson's a good rookie and everything. And, they need a quarterback and get the ball to those guys pretty quickly instead of like trying to run around and make a play. And that's kind of like the problem with Carson Wentz. I mean, he keeps playing like it's 2017, and he's had the torn ACL, he's had the stress fracture in his back. He's not that guy anymore, and I think a lot of it is just his stubbornness to realize that he's got to find a different way. It's like, a pitcher when you have like Tommy John surgery, or you tear your labrum in your shoulder. I mean, you got to change the way you pitch, and it's kind of the same way with Carson Wentz, and seems like he's still trying to hold on to that magical 2017 season, because he was great that year. I mean, he was an MVP. He was going to be the MVP until he tore his ACL, and he's just not that guy anymore.
Yeah, it's a little bit of stubbornness. Part of me felt like when he got the big money contract, he kind of, was like, hey, I've arrived. I'm here now, because I don't recall Carson Wentz being the first man in, the last man out, all the teams gravitating towards his leadership and extra work ethic. And that's the difference between a Wentz and a Hurts that I see. And we're talking to Martin Frank, Delaware News Journal here, staying on the defensive side of the ball. Obviously, they made Wentz waiver, but they did it surprisingly, Martin, like nobody on the defensive line is really playing more than 50% of the snaps, which is pretty impressive. Now, Josh Sweat, I think I got this off of your tweet this morning, by the way. Josh Sweat played 61%. Reddick was at 56%, but you go down the line. Hargrave, 53%. Milton Williams, 49%. Fletcher Cox, 47%. Marlon T, 44%, and so on and so forth. I mean, I don't think there's a deeper defensive line in the NFL than the Philadelphia Eagles right now.
Yeah, and a lot of people complain, why isn't Jordan Davis playing more? And I think Jordan Davis played 34% of the snaps, and
31%, yep.
31, and like the other two games he was right around there, maybe 32 or 34%. And it's because they have that rotation. I mean, Fletcher Cox, is playing great. He's really adapted to Jonathan Gannon's system. He's accepted it. Javon Hargrave's been playing pretty well. I mean, Milton Williams playing well. I mean, that's what a rotation is. I mean, you get fresh bodies in and out of the game. I mean, it wasn't like, last year, I think like some of those guys were playing like 75, 80% of the snaps, like Fletcher Cox especially, and it was wearing him down. I mean, you could see in his production last year, and this is great for him. I mean, he's playing less and he's playing better. It's the same with the other guys. I mean, they're keeping them all fresh, and that's what you want. I mean, yes, Jordan Davis will play more as the season goes along. I mean, if there's an injury or something like that, but I mean, I would like to think that as the season goes along, his playing time will increase. And I mean, the guy's a force. I mean, the second play of the game, he like right in Wentz's face, bats down the ball. He showed he's going to be a presence in this league, and it's going to happen. It's just, he's stuck behind two really good guys, all pros and everything like that. So, he's got to wait his turn. It's the same thing with Nakobe Dean. He didn't play at all at linebacker, but like, how can you argue for him playing a decent amount of the game when Kaiser White and TJ Edwards are playing so well? I mean, it's a good situation for the Eagles because they got all these young guys kind of like waiting in the wings behind veterans who are playing well. They don't have to rush them in there before they're ready and watch them make mistakes that could end up costing the game. These guys are learning from what they're seeing behind veterans who've done it for years and years. I mean, look at Cam Jurgens on the offensive line. He can't play either because he's behind Jason Kelsey, who's one of the best of all time.
Well, that's the luxury of having a veteran team. That's the luxury of the depth that Howie Roseman's accumulated here on defense. We haven't seen that kind of depth at the linebacker position. And you mentioned TJ Edwards, who was in with Jordan Davis on that ninth and final sack. Like, Nakobe Dean has the luxury of sitting and learning. And if we need you, Nakobe, we'll call you. Same thing with Jordan Davis. We just spoke to the depth, the tremendous depth of the defensive line. That's a great luxury to have in the NFL. And so for Davis to just kind of be there on the back burner, if they need him to play more, they can. But you mentioned Cox 47%, Brandon Graham 35% of the snaps, not much more than Jordan Davis, but they're preserving these guys. And I think it's a much more effective overall unit on that defensive front. And, listen, we could sit here and I think Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and Marcus Epps played 100% of the snaps again. James Bradbury was at 100%. Darius Slay, Zach McPherson stepping up when Slay was out of the game. So another stellar performance from the defensive side of the football. Now, let's change it up. Let's switch gears here with Martin Frank, Delaware News-Journal. On the offensive side, you could argue, hey, all the points came in the second quarter. It was the third straight game where, I don't know if they took their foot off the gas, but they didn't score in the second half. The run attack, they came into the game with the best rushing attack. They only averaged 2.4 yards per carry. I see the first down discrepancy. They had 21 first downs. 2 were penalty. 3 were coming on the run game. 16 through the air. Was this concerning for you? Is this something that, hey, Washington, they just have a really stellar defensive line there with Deron Payne and then Jonathan Allen. I know their ends were banged up, but the interior defensive line is good. What are you kind of nitpicking here on the offensive side?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because it's the second, like you mentioned, the second week in a row where they didn't score in the second half after getting a big lead in the first half. And, that's what like Jalen Hurts was saying after the game. Yeah, I'm not satisfied. That's not up to our standards. We got to find a way, to score more points. And, I was actually rewatching, like before I got on the show, the first series of the third quarter, and it was like a 3rd and 19, and Hurts threw a deep ball to Devonta Smith. He was probably like 2 yards behind the defender, but the ball wasn't like far enough in front of him. And the defender was able to kind of make up the play or break up the play. Maybe you can argue it was pass interference, maybe not, but whatever. If he completes that pass, well, that's a touchdown and it's 31-0. And, the game's over. I mean, it pretty much was over anyway. And I think also a lot of it on the offense, was, the defense was letting Carson Wentz like throw these like short 5-6 yard passes and chew up a lot of the clock in the second half. So they didn't really get a whole lot of opportunities. And by the time, like, as you get late in the third quarter, it's just like on offense, just like try to run the ball, try to run the clock down. And you're running against like a really good defensive line that Washington has with Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, and, Montez Sweat and everything. And those guys would make plays. I mean, that's the strongest part of the Washington defense. And, the Eagles weren't about to like light up the scoreboard. I mean, throw it deep at that point anyway. It's just one of those things. They were content to let, Carson Wentz chew up the clock by, dinking and dunking his way down the field. And if they scored, great. And if not, they could turn it on again. I'd be interested to see, like, if it was a tight game and they have to score in the second half, can they do it? Because we haven't really seen that in any of the 3 games. I mean, even against the Lions, like they took a 17-point lead early in the third quarter, and they took another 17-point lead late in the third quarter. So they weren't really, I mean, it got a little bit hairy at the end, but, they weren't really challenged that much in the second half. So maybe if they're going into a game, let's say Sunday against Doug Peterson, where it's like 24-17 in the third quarter, can they turn it on and, run out the clock or, go down and score if they have to? And yeah, I mean, we'll just have to find out. But yeah, they probably did take their foot off the gas a little bit in that second half. I mean, they did try for the home run ball on the first drive of the third quarter. And, once, they gave the ball back to Washington, and Washington chewed up a bunch of the clock. It was already midway through the third quarter. And at that point, you got a 24-0 lead. Just let it ride.
Yeah, no, you're right. They might get tested this week with the Jaguars and our good friend Doug Peterson. They took the Chargers out to the woodshed this past week. And, it's funny because suddenly the Eagles are expected to win the Jaguars game. At Arizona, cross country will be tough, but I think they'll be favored there too. And whether or not Dak Prescott is going to return for that Week 6 matchup, I think the Eagles will be favored in that ball game. And suddenly, they should be 6-0 going into the bye week, which I don't think anybody could have predicted that one, but they're doing it with a well-balanced attack. We mentioned the snap counts on the defense. The running back by committee I've been keeping tabs on, and again, thank you to your tweet. Miles Sanders 59%, Kenneth Gainwell 31%, Boston Scott 10%. You're sprinkling Jalen Hurts. Oh, by the way, somebody gets to feast every week. We made such a big deal out of Devonta Smith not catching a ball in the first week. Well, it was Devonta Smith's time to shine. And you talk about the ball distribution. Goddard got into the fold. I know he left temporarily with an injury. What is your take? I want to ask you if there was any major injuries. I didn't hear none. But first, just in terms of the ball distribution with Hurts sharing the wealth and kind of, continuing to develop in terms of a progressive quarterback when needed.
Yeah, I think he's been great with distributing the ball. I mean, like you go back to the first game, everyone's like, oh, A.J. Brown got like pretty much, I think maybe half of the targets overall offense. But I mean, I think a lot of that was a product of the way the Lions played him. I mean, if they're going to leave him in single coverage, I mean, why not go to A.J. Brown? He's pretty good. And I think like as teams adjusted and maybe devoted more attention to A.J. Brown, then you're seeing Devonta Smith get open. You're trying to deep ball to Quez Watkins. He didn't catch any passes on Sunday, but he drew like 2 defensive pass interference calls, and those were both smart plays because Hurts saw that Watkins was one-on-one with I forget his name, but
Wild Goose, was it Wild Goose?
Yeah, Wild Goose, that's right. William Jackson was ruled out before the game, so Wild Goose was starting in his place. And anytime like Hurts saw him one-on-one with Quez Watkins, he's throwing deep to Quez, and he got 2 defensive pass interference calls. So that, I mean, it doesn't count as a catch, obviously, but I mean, those were plays that could have gone for possibly touchdowns, but at least significant yardage on penalties and everything. So what you're seeing with Jalen Hurts is teams like have to plan for him now. I mean, last year you kind of knew that if you double team Goddard, you double team Devonta Smith, you force Hurts to like either run to his left or throw in the middle. He couldn't do it, but that's not the case anymore. I mean, you can't just double team one receiver and have them shut down. And you also have to account for Jalen Hurts' running ability. I mean, I think he only had 20 yards against Washington, but like, he'd already shown like against, Minnesota and Detroit that, you give him some space, he'll take off and he'll burn you. And it's just like night and day with last year with the way Jalen Hurts has played. And teams have to account for him now. I mean, they can't just focus on shutting down a receiver, and that takes away the Eagles' run. That takes away the Eagles' passing game. They're pretty much one-dimensional. That's not the case anymore. You have to account for Jalen Hurts, no matter where he is on the field, whether it's throwing or running, and it's like a dynamic that the Eagles haven't had in a long time from their quarterback.
If you're a defensive coordinator, you have to game plan against Jalen Hurts. And I mentioned at the top of the show, it hasn't happened in over 70 years, Martin. A player to throw for 900 and run for over 100 through his first 3 games. I think he's got 967 passing, a $150 rushing. I mean, he's doing things that haven't happened in the National Football League. So let me ask you this, Martin Frank making his Football Playbook debut, because the big question is, will he or won't he? And I'm talking about the one Howie Roseman in terms of extending a Jalen Hurts. And I saw that the Eagles are projected to be $35 million under the cap next year. The cap is expected to increase another $20 to $25 million. So let me ask you, Martin, if you're Howie Roseman, do you start contract extension negotiations in season? Do you let the season play out? Do you get ahead of the curve, or do you put yourself in the Lamar Jackson basket because Baltimore didn't want to pay Lamar Jackson? And I got news for you. If Baltimore doesn't want to give him $50 million a year, there's going to be a taker out there. Somebody's going to pay that man his money. What do you do if you're in this Howie Roseman predicament?
I think if you're Howie Roseman, you have to try. I mean, before the season, a lot of the talk was, is Jalen Hurts going to prove himself to be a franchise quarterback? And I think he's pretty much answered that question. I mean, the guy he's playing at an elite level. I mean, I heard you mention that earlier, and maybe you could even make a case for an MVP. I mean, Josh Allen's obviously great. Tua's been playing really well. Lamar Jackson's still having a good year and everything, but he's right up there in that conversation. Oh yeah, Pat Mahomes is good too. I don't want to forget about him, but still, he's having that kind of year. I mean, his passer rating is like 106.8. I mean, fifth in the NFL right now, and he's completing 67% of his passes. I mean, and that's the thing. You look at last year, I think he was like at 61.3, and the year before, like 57 in limited amount of time. So, for Jalen Hurts to be like a really good quarterback, you wanted to see him completing more than 65% of his passes, and he's definitely doing that. So, if you have a quarterback like that, you're not going to get anybody better in the draft unless you're picking like first or second. And I mean, I know the Eagles have the Saints pick, and that could be possibly a top 10. But if the Eagles are playing the way they are, I mean, their pick probably won't be until the 20s, and it's hard to take those two and move up, to first or second. And then you have to find that there's a quarterback who's better than what you got. And is that the case? I don't know. It might be too soon to discern that, but still, you got to start those talks with Jalen Hurts. And, the thing with Lamar Jackson is, I don't know. I mean, it's going to be pretty interesting to see what it would take. I mean, to get Hurts extended, but they still have one more year on his rookie contract after this year. So, you could still load up and, go for another Super Bowl next year. I mean, possibly go this year. You can use those resources in other directions to address other needs and everything like that. So, Howie Roseman definitely has to start thinking about getting Hurts an extension, because he's definitely playing like he deserves one.
I can't possibly imagine why you would blow it all up at the most important position in all of football. I don't care how good the quarterbacks are. They're not going to be on the level of what Jalen Hurts is playing right now, 3 years into the league. Oh, by the way, just 24 years old. Look at the first quarterback off the board this past year's draft. Kenny Pickett's 25. He can't even see the field. Jalen Hurts is in his third year.
That's a great point. He just turned 24 years old in August. I mean, he's still getting better. Like, this isn't as good as he can be. And that's the thing. I mean, why blow that all up and try to draft like someone like CJ Stroud, who might be a great quarterback, but then again, you still have to wait a couple years for him to develop. You already have a guy who's been in the system for a couple years, who's developing and can still get much better. So, I think the answer is pretty obvious at this point. I mean, you gotta find a way to keep Jalen Hurts.
Hey, one of the only few undefeated teams left in the league. This team's built to win now, and they've got a window here where they can be a contender for the next 2 or 3 years significantly. And we'll see what the Giants do on Monday Night Football here tonight. It might just be down to the Dolphins and the Eagles as the only two undefeated teams after week 3 of the NFL, which is what they always wanted with the parity card. But we will continue to keep our finger on the pulse here with the Philadelphia Eagles throughout the show, throughout the season. Martin, hopefully we can have you back on. I enjoyed this conversation thoroughly. What can our listening audience find over at the Delaware News Journal? What do you have on the horizon there?
Well, actually, I have a column today just about Jalen Hurts playing at an MVP type of level and just showing like why, based on, comparison for what, Carson Wentz did yesterday compared to what Hurts did. And also like how that one play at the end of the first half pretty much showed everything you need to know about Jalen Hurts, how he got like everyone to the line on the 4th down play, called a play that wasn't even in the game plan for that day, and completed a touchdown pass to Devonta Smith that put the game away. So you can see all that, DelawareOnline.com, and I'm at Twitter at mfrankNFL if you want to follow along too.
Yeah, and make sure you go follow Martin. I know the chat room enjoyed this thoroughly. We'd love to have you back on here, and we'll be logged on for all your coverage, Martin. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks for having me. It was great. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Martin Frank dropping the hammer here on the Football Playbook, Delaware News Journal. Make sure you go follow him on Twitter for all his Eagles coverage. And when we come back, we'll have one of Philadelphia's natives, Howard Balzer, NFL Hall of Fame voter, insider, Bird Game, back strong, right after this.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Action News at 11 with Rick Williams. It's the team you trust to bring it all together. The stories that impact your community. A sports roundup for the locals. And the AccuWeather forecast you depend on. Action News at 11 with Rick Williams.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
Welcome to Pondley Hockey. We've helped over 100,000 injured and disabled workers obtain benefits, as well as some of the biggest settlements in the state. If you've been injured at work, give Pondley Hockey a call.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
Kicking back in cruise control, driving like Jalen Hurts down the highway, baby. Woo! Kicking back. Enjoy the ride. Been trying to tell everybody since August you're witnessing the mystical, magical carpet ride. And each and every Monday, we have Philadelphia's finest, Philadelphia's own Howard Balzer, NFL insider, joining us here on the Football Playbook. Checking in from the desert out there. It's all brought to you by Ocean Casino Resorts. Make sure you hit the like button. Howard, good morning. How are you today?
I am doing well. I'm enjoying your little dancing there, although I don't know if I would call it dancing. But hey, you can rock with the best of them.
I try to keep it funky out here in the Jersey Shore. We haven't done any fist pumping yet. I'll save that for the Super Bowl. But
a little ahead of yourself, after 3 weeks.
Well, hey, I predicted a preseason, Howard, and here we are, week 3. Your Miami Dolphins, New York Football Giants, and Philadelphia Eagles are the only undefeated teams in the National Football League. So may I ask you, my friend, what do you take away from this Eagle squad here early on?
Well, they're a good football team. There's no doubt about it. But I always say pump the brakes because you never know. I mean, after 2 games, all anyone is asking, boy, those Bills are still showing that they're the best team in football. And what do? They go out and, crazily had over 40 minutes of possession time against Miami and still lost the football game. They had 90 plays in the game, and Miami had somewhere around 40, 49 or something like that, but they lost. So again, this is a good football team. I don't think there's any doubt about it. They're in a not a very good division, so that certainly helps. But you got to keep proving it week after week. But they're in very good position in a conference that doesn't have a lot of teams at the top. One note on those records, you were mentioning only 2 undefeated, well, 3 counting the Giants. We'll see what happens tonight. Only one team hasn't won yet. 2 teams haven't won. The Raiders are 0-3 and Houston's 0-2-1. But Rick, right now there are 25 of the 32 teams in the league are either 1-2 or 2-1. And Dallas will be the 26th tonight, no matter what happens in that game. And if they should beat the Giants, that'll up it to 27 teams at 1-2 or 2-1. So it's starting out like another typical year in the National Football League. And like I said, after tonight, still 14 games for every team to go.
No, it's still wide open. And aside from a handful of teams, there's a lot of teams that believe they're going to be in the playoff mix. And I would say Josh McDaniels and Lovie Smith still feel like they have a shot. But, the way Jalen Hurts is playing right now, Howard, he's one of the leading contenders for the MVP conversation. He's the first player in the NFL to have over 900 passing yards and 150 rushing yards since 1950, which, he's doing things in the NFL that haven't even been done in the modern day era. Is this an abbreviation because he's just played poor competition, or do we just need to start realizing like Jalen Hurts is playing at an elite level?
No, he is right now. There's absolutely no doubt about it. I heard the end of your conversation with Martin, and there's no question he just gets better and better, not only every week, but it's happened since he came in and became a starter at the end of the 2020 season. He's gotten better and better every week. And what the Eagles have done, obviously, is they've surrounded him with talent and with players. When you have guys like Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown, who are just making big plays, had huge average yards per reception in yesterday's game. When you have that talent on your team, then obviously that helps any quarterback. And so it makes it easier for an offensive coordinator with the game plan, because they know the defense can't defend everybody. And so as long as you protect the quarterback, then you're going to be in good shape. And of course, Hurts has the ability to escape a lot of the problems that can happen sometimes in protection. So he's a dual threat. He's obviously a dual threat quarterback. And as the improvement has come in the passing game, it's hard to imagine that he's not going to keep getting better and better, especially, like I said, as the talent is there around him for him and those other guys to make plays.
And I'll tell you what, I can't think of somebody that has a better demeanor or DNA just built for the Philadelphia media. This guy's cool as a cucumber. I can't imagine why anybody in their right mind would want to blow this up and draft a new quarterback and start all over again.
Who's suggesting that? Why is that even a debate at this point? But it just shows everybody. I guess I don't know what even describe it as the world we're in now, but it's just get rid. Oh, let's do better. Let's do this. Yeah. Let's do that. But like you said, okay, if you decide we think we can do better, who's that going to be? There's no guarantees in the draft. Once you have your guy and you find your guy and you see how good this guy can play, you just do all you can to keep him. That's, to me, is a no-brainer that it shouldn't even be a debate.
No, I agree with you. And of course, you're out there in the desert covering the Arizona Cardinals. GoPhoenix.com for all your Arizona Cardinals coverage. And they got a $46 million quarterback in the one Kyler Murray. You can argue, or I will say, quite frankly, Jalen Hurts is playing at a better and higher level than Kyler Murray right now. You look at Lamar Jackson, I stated with Martin, like, if Baltimore doesn't want to pay him the money, somebody surely is going to make him a $50 million quarterback. And with the cap increasing next year, the Eagles being $35 million under the cap, I would urge Howie Roseman to start those negotiations right now. Agree or disagree?
Well, sometimes you don't want to do that stuff during the season, and I would understand if they say, hey, let's this season play out. But you could certainly begin, what do we call them, exploratory talks, certainly. But you've got a lot of time in the off season to get it done. It's hard. It would be hard for me to imagine. I mean, it's hard to imagine that Hurts is going to play at this particular level for 17 games. That's probably not sustainable. But he's still playing well. And hey, I mean, he helped get the Eagles in the playoffs last year, obviously. So there's plenty of time in the offseason to get it done. And you've got the other deals that are going to be benchmarks. Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert will be eligible for the fifth-year option in the next offseason. And so their deals will get done at some point. But, sometimes you just don't want to have big negotiations like this, especially with a quarterback going on during the season. But I'm fairly confident to say it will happen in due time. And like I said, I mean, it's a no-brainer. Now, his is a little more complicated because he wasn't a first-round pick, and so there's no fifth-year option available, and that makes next year the last year of his deal. But he's going to make a lot of money. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I'm sure deep down the Eagles with Howie Roseman and everybody else, they realize and understand that.
No, fair enough. And look no further than your Arizona Cardinals in terms of what a ugly contract dispute could look like. So why bring that into a season of optimism? Maybe it's better off to wait till after the season, because we saw for a second there, Kyler Murray scrubbed all his social media. We didn't know if he was coming or he was going. Now they gave him the big money. Hasn't necessarily panned out to results on the field early on thus far in the 2022 season, but they take on the defending world champions. They lose, 20 to 12. 20 to 12. And, they're still down DeAndre Hopkins, but for a Rams offense that basically had no running attack whatsoever, the Cardinals just couldn't seem to get it going here this past weekend.
Well, they get off to bad starts, and that's been the story so far of this season. And then they start playing better, and it happened yesterday. I mean, it was a 13-9 game in the third quarter, but they were kind of looked like, I don't know what to call it, just a little, nickel and dime offense. I mean, they had three incredible drives that were, 16, 17, 18 plays, took a lot of time off the clock, but then they ended up with field goals. And so they scored as many times as the Rams in that game. Each team scored 4 times. The difference was all the points for the Cardinals were field goals, and the Rams, got 2 touchdowns. But, almost like Buffalo, the Cardinals had 81 plays to 48 for the Rams, but they couldn't score a touchdown. But just as I said, the weapons that the Eagles have, without Hopkins, A.J. Green leaves in the second quarter. And I'm telling you, all the receivers that they were putting out in the field in the game yesterday after A.J. Green left, none of them are taller than me and you.
Yeah.
I mean, no. One guy that they elevated off the practice squad, Andre Bachelia, he's the tallest of the group. They list him as 5'10", but I stood next to him in the locker room, and he's no taller than me. And so they have Andy Isabella and Greg Dortch are 5'7". Even Hollywood Brown is only 5'9". And so, and Hollywood Brown got 17 targets yesterday, had a nice game, 14 receptions, but he only averaged 10 yards per catch. And so they need Hopkins back. They need Antoine Wesley back. Rondale Moore has missed time. And so right now they're in a tough spot. They're without Hopkins for another 3 games. It's hard to imagine what this offense would look like if both Hopkins and Brown were out there. Then you can run the ball more because the defense is accounting for 2 guys on the field. And so that's been their biggest problem so far. But they're still sitting there 1-2. The Rams are 2-1, and every other team in this division is 1-2. So they're just kind of biding the time until they get some players back. But hey, 2 weeks from yet, they've lost 7. Rick, they've lost 7 consecutive games at home, and it's hard to imagine it won't be 8 when the Eagles come to the Valley in 2 weeks.
Well, we'll talk more about that next week for sure. Luckily, the 49ers, what a debacle that was last night. Jimmy G with pulled a Dan Orlovsky, ran out of his own end zone, had some poor throws, interception there at the end. The Broncos survived despite themselves. But, I mean, I look around the NFC, Howard. I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot and ask you for your NFC power rankings. But I watched the 49ers last night. I don't know if they're the team. I was tuned into the Tampa Bay Green Bay game. Didn't necessarily look like world beaters. You had a front row ticket to the world champions and the Rams yesterday. I mean, to me, it's like the Eagles are head and shoulders above all these teams. But what do I know? How do you kind of sort through the NFC power rankings here?
Well, right now, the way they're playing, they are. And that's all you can really judge it on. Will it be that way in 5 weeks and 10 weeks? Who knows? But right now, they're playing the best football in the conference. There's no doubt about it. You know, the Rams don't have a lot of weapons outside of Cooper Kupp, and they ran the ball a little bit better. On one drive, Cam Akers had 39 of his 61 yards. And so, their defense is still solid, but they're a beat-up football team. They were starting their third right guard of the season in the game. And then Rob Havenstein, the starting right tackle, went out during the game. So they have issues on the offensive line. They have issues in their secondary. But it was good it was a positive for them that they were matched up against the Rams with those issues in the secondary, because the Cardinals just weren't able to take advantage of it. So yeah, right now the Eagles are playing the best. I don't think there's any doubt about it in this conference.
Yeah, and we'll find out next week. We'll have you back on and preview the Cardinals-Eagles matchup. But before we get there, who do the Cardinals have on deck this week? I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah, they'll go to Carolina to play the Panthers, who came up with a much-needed victory yesterday. The Cardinals have struggled with the Panthers. In fact, the Panthers have won 6 in a row against them, and 2 of them were in the playoffs several years ago. But the 4 regulars, they've lost to them badly in 4 consecutive regular season games, including last year at home when they lost to Carolina 34-10. So they realize they can't go into Carolina and play like they've been playing. Cardinals are a better team on the road than at home.
There, guys. Did we lose Howard?
It's just a very weird situation where the Cardinals' one win was on the road against Las Vegas, and last year they were 8-1 on the road during the regular season. So we'll see what they're able to do in that game, and they hope to get Rondale Moore back. We'll see if that happens, but they just need to get the offense going, get off to a better start, but they haven't been able to do that so far in all 3 games this season.
Sorry about that, Howard. Looks like we lost Rick for a bit due to a technical difficulty. But, man, we appreciate you so much for providing your insight. One final topic, before we get you out of here, my man. Rick brought up the fact that the NFC just appears to be so wide open. I know it's pretty early, and it's only 3 weeks, and there's so much left to settle, and there's so much dust left to be settled. But so far, who do you project? And, again, this may be early. But who do you project as of right now to being the 2 best teams in each respective conference, your AFC team and your NFC team? I know the AFC might be a little tougher.
Well, you still have to believe that Green Bay and Tampa Bay are going to be there at the end. And, I think, once Garoppolo gets his feet under him, I think the 49ers with that defense are certainly very good. And I'm not leaving out the Eagles, believe me. But and you have to figure the Rams will get the ship righted. So I just think it's so close among all those teams in the NFC right now. As I was just saying with Rick, I think the Eagles are certainly playing the best football. So there's nothing to say, well, they won't be by the end of the year. You never know what's going to happen. If I was going to pick a second team right now, boy, that's almost a flip of the coin with some of the teams that we've been talking about. I mean, they all have their Green Bay and Tampa Bay all have a lot of injuries. Well, Green Bay doesn't have injuries at receiver. They just have a lot of young guys that Aaron Rodgers is learning about. The Buccaneers have injuries at wide receiver, and the Rams have the injuries we were just talking about. So you just figure they'll get better, but you don't know what other injuries are coming down the road. But right now, like I said, I think it's the Eagles, and it's a toss-up to who the second best team is there. In the AFC, I'll still stick with Buffalo. Every team's going to have one that they lose. But, man, with the way Miami is playing, they're playing with a lot of resilience. Baltimore bounces back. And then you've got that AFC West where, the Chiefs lose to the Colts. I mean, there's just so many crazy things. And the Colts finally come up with a win. And look what the Jaguars do to the Chargers, even though Justin Herbert was playing hurt. So I think things are kind of like tumbling around a little bit in the AFC. But I still go with Kansas City because they're the defending champs, and Buffalo is the two best in the AFC. But obviously, we could be talking something different next week or 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, really quickly, is it fair to say the NFL is as competitive as it's ever been?
Yeah, oh, it definitely is, and I think it's usually that way. There's never that much difference between the teams that win and lose. There's a lot of close games. I mean, yesterday we had 10 games decided by 4 or fewer points, and so that's a pretty big number for one day in the NFL. And there were only 5 double-digit games, and 4 of those were still within 2 scores. So that's the NFL. It's built that way. Injuries certainly can change things, but that's what brings everybody back week to week, because everyone knows no matter how you're playing, anything can happen on any week in the NFL, and that's what makes all the urgency that there is on every given Sunday and Thursday night and Sunday night and Monday night.
Hey, well, the NFL really stands for not for long. You bring up great points, Howard. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on the program, the Football Playbook with Ric Serritella and myself. Once again, we apologize for the technical difficulty. Howard, thank you so much. We'll see you soon, my friend.
My pleasure, Tone. Take care.
All right. You guys, that was your dose of the Football Playbook. We really appreciate guys like Martin Frank for coming onto the platform. We appreciate our guy, Howard Balzer, for coming on as well. Also, we have our main man, Ric Serritella, back in the building. How you feeling, Ricky?
Always great to get the Tone DeShields cameo on the show before we wrap it up on the Football Playbook, Tone. And it worked out good because I wanted to pick your brain. Shout out to Howard Balzer there as well, longtime NFL insider, Hall of Fame voter. I was going to ask him about the Pro Bowl before we get into Eagles. The Pro Bowl is going away. It's going to be a skills competition and flag football event. And they've secured Peyton Manning's Omaha Productions here to produce the television show. So quickly there, your thoughts, and then I'll get an Eagles take from you.
Yeah, it's about time they did something with the Pro Bowl weekend or Pro Bowl week, I guess you'll say. It's about time they did something with it. The Pro Bowl game itself might be the worst all-star game to ever live. So yeah, I'm completely on board with them, nixing it and doing something with it, because in my opinion, kind of like boxing, you can't play boxing. You can't just play football, right? It's a battle of wills out there, and I think you actually put guys that are at a higher risk of getting hurt when you have them pulling their punches like that.
Agree. When you play to not get injured, that's when you get injured. And no, I like the old school skills competition. Boomer Esiason, Dan Marino, John Elway flinging it around. I hope they bring that back. So I was actually excited. I think they could still announce the Pro Bowl teams, just don't play the game. And I know we're running out of time. We're up against it. We got a couple minutes left to play with. What was the Tone DeShields takeaway? I know you were doing the Eagles pre- and post game at Ocean Casino Resorts, taking in all the action. But what are your thoughts here quickly before we wrap it up?
Yeah, man. I gotta give credit to Jalen Hurts. Just being able to spread the wealth around, and I know Devonta Smith and AJ Brown had the bulk of the targets, but when you think about the way he spread it around to the tight ends and the running backs, even though the running backs didn't really get a chance to do much with it, he still found those guys. I think that this Grant Calcaterra kid may be one of the biggest steals in the draft. He had one lone target and one lone catch for 40 yards. And I got to be honest, I thought it was Dallas Goedert out there for a second, but then I realized, hold on, wait, Dallas Goedert is not that fast. So man, I got to give credit to Grant Calcaterra for making do with that lone target, man. He made a big splash, and it led to some points. Also, the defensive line, man, just got to give them credit where credit is due. They needed that game. I think they needed to get their confidence up, and they needed to be reminded that they are one of the best in the league.
Hey, well, the Eagles are one of the best, one of the few undefeated teams. That's Tone DeShields, one of the best in the business when it comes to producing the show behind the scenes here on the Football Playbook. I appreciate the time, Tone. Always great perspective. And of course, he gets it kickstarted here each and every day on the JAKIB Sports channel, starting off with around the NFC East. 12 hours of nonstop Eagles NFL coverage here on JAKIB Sports channel. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. We come on each and every day on the Football Playbook from 10 to 12, following the Birds 365. We'll have the Sports Take coming up here in just a minute, followed by Dan Cilio, the National Football Show, and of course your Eagles pre and post game down there at the Gallery Ocean Casino Resorts. It's been 2 hours of power on this Victory Monday, our third consecutive Victory Monday. And of course, this week's theme was be a thermostat, not a thermometer. That's what Jalen Hurts said pregame. That's what we're going to live by here on the post game. Tomorrow, we've got some more good guests. I know Austin Lane will be checking in to talk about the Jaguars week. We'll also have Tony Baselli, recently inducted Hall of Fame member, later on in the week. So a lot of surprises on the Football Playbook throughout the show. Shout out to Krause and Xander for holding it down. Tone behind the scenes. Ric Serritella here for our 20th episode of the Football Playbook. We'll be back at it again tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern. In the meantime, buckle up. It's the Sports Take coming up noon Eastern.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Action News at 11 with Rick Williams. It's the team you trust to bring it all together. The stories that impact your community, a sports roundup for the locals, and the AccuWeather forecast you depend on. Action News at 11 with Rick Williams.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
Welcome to Pondley Hockey. We've helped over 100,000 injured and disabled workers obtain benefits, as well as some of the biggest settlements in the state. If you've been injured at work, give Pondley Hockey a call.